Hello everybody, this is Pastor Green. We're doing another Bible study, 2 Kings chapter 4. If you'd like me to come speak at your church, or if you have any questions, you can email me at godsohman@gmail.com, or you can just comment below. So we led into the last chapter, in verse 27. It says that he took his eldest son that should have reigned in his stead, and offered him for a burnt offering upon the wall. And there was a great indignation in Israel, and they departed from him, and returned to their own land. So he decided to take his eldest son, who was supposed to take over as king after he passed away, and he sacrificed him. You know, a lot of people back then, they worshipped this god named Baal, and the Baal was the one you sacrificed your children to. And child sacrifice is not okay, but yet we do it today through Planned Parenthood. 2 Kings 4 verse 1. Now there cried a certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets unto Elijah, saying, My servant husband is dead, and thou knowest thy servant did fear the Lord, and the creditors to come to take him to my two sons to be bondsmen. So she's saying that her husband passed away, and now she owes a debt, and the people are coming to collect that debt. And in order to collect that debt, they're going to take their children and basically put them into slavery. And Elijah said unto her, What shall I do for thee? Tell me, what hast thou in the house? And she said, Thy handmaid had not a thing in the house, save a pot of oil. She's saying, I have nothing to give these people except for a pot of oil, and that's not going to cover the debt. Then he said, Go, borrow these vessels abroad all the neighbors, even empty vessels, borrow not a few. He's saying, go around to all the people you know and ask for vessels to hold oil. He says, don't borrow a couple, borrow a whole bunch, as much as you possibly can. So the woman and her two sons went around to all the neighbors, and she asked for pots from all of her friends, and pots of oils, empty pots. He said, get as many as you possibly can. And when thou art come in, thou shalt shut the door upon thee and upon thy sons, and thou shalt pour out unto all these vessels, and thou shalt set aside which that is full. So take the pot of oil you have, and put the oil in all these vessels, and you're going to see that all these vessels are going to be full. So she went from him and shut the door upon her and upon her sons, who brought the vessels to her, and she poured out. So she started pouring these vessels of oil, these little bitty pots she had, and she found out that every time she'd pour the oil out, it would fill these vessels, and she still had more in the pot. And it came to pass, when the vessels were full, that she said unto her sons, Bring me yet another vessel. And he said unto her, There is not a vessel more, and the oil stayed. So she still had more oil that could go into these vessels, but there was no more vessels to put this oil in. Then she came and told the man of God, and he said, Go, sell the oil, and pay thy debt, and live thou and thy children and the rest. He's saying, now you have all this oil in the house, sell this oil, and use the money to pay your debt. So there's a lesson to be learned here. God can use what you already have, and he can provide in amazing ways. This woman limited her own blessing by not borrowing more vessels. There's a thing in here that said, little is much when God is in it. She just had one little small pot of oil, and because of God, she got multiple pots of oil she was able to sell and pay for this debt. Little is much when God is in it. Labor not for wealth or fame. There's a crown, and you can win it if you go in Jesus' name. And when the conflict here has ended and a race on earth is run, he will say, if you've been faithful, welcome home, my child, well done. 1 Kings 4:8. But it fell on a day that Elijah passed to Shulam, that was a great woman, and she constrained him to eat bread. And so it was, as they passed by, they turned thither to eat bread. So he ran to this woman who said, I want you to come to my house and have bread. And she said unto her husband, Behold now, I perceive that this is a holy man of God, which passes us by continually. Let us make a little chamber, I pray thee. This woman told her husband, this man is a man of God. We need to make a little room in our house for this guy to stay in. On the walls, and let it for him be a bed and a table and a stool and a candlestick. And it shall be when he cometh to us that he shall turn in thither. She's saying we need to put a place in our house for this prophet of God to stay in when he's in town. And because she did this, this is where the idea of a prophet's chamber, a place in your home for the prophet to stay and do his work. There's another lesson to learn. Learn to see when others have needs and take care of God's men. Even prophets have normal human needs like to sleep, eat, and to sit down. And it fell on a day that he came thither, and he turned into the chamber and laid there. And he said to Gehazi his servant, call this Shushemite. And when he called her, she stood before him. Another lesson to learn. When your boss tells you what to do, you should just do it. And he said unto him, say now to her, behold, thou hast been careful for us with all the care. What is to be done for thee? Wouldest thou spoken to the king or the captain of the host? Again, when others help you, help them. And she answered, I dwell among my own people. And when he said, what is thou to be done for her? And Gehazi answered, verily, she had no child, and her husband is old. Learn to spot when others have needs or are burdened before being asked to help. And he said, call her. And when he called her, he stood in the door. And he said, about this season, according to the time of life, thou shalt embrace a son. And she said, nay, my lord, thou man of God, did not lie unto thy handmaid. He's saying, around this time next year, you're going to have a child. The women couldn't believe it. Elijah was not a gynecologist or an obstetrician or a reproductive endocrinologist, but he knew God answered his prayers. And the woman conceived and bare a son that season that Elijah had said unto her, according to the time of her life. And when the child was grown, it fell on a day that he went out to his father to the reapers. And he said to his father, my head, my head. And he said to the lad, carry him to his mother. And when he had taken him and brought him to his mother, he sat on her knees at noon, and then he died. Sometimes bad things happen to innocent people, but God can use these things for his glory. Romans 8 says, we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to whom that are called according to his purpose. Back to 2 Kings 4:21. And he went up and he laid on the bed of the man of God, and shut the door upon him, and went out. And she called unto her husband and said, send me, I pray thee, one of the young men, and one of the asses, that they run to the man of God and come again. And he said, wherefore wilt thou go to him this day? It is neither new moon nor Sabbath. And she said, it shall be well. Then she saddled up an ass and said to a servant, drive and go forward. Slack not thy riding for me, except I bid thee. So she went, and she came to a man of God at Mount Carmel. And it came to pass, when the man of God saw her afar off, that he said to Gehazi his servant, behold, yonder is that Shushemite. Run now, I pray thee, to meet her, and say unto her, is it well with thee? Is it well with thy husband? Is it well with the child? And she answered, it is well. She didn't want to talk to the assistant. She wanted to talk to the big man himself. And when she came to the man of God to the hill, she caught him by the feet, because Gazelle came to thrust her away. And the man of God said, let her alone, for her soul is vexed within her. And the Lord has hid it from me, and has not told me. And when she said, did I desire my son the Lord? I did not say, do not deceive me. Some things happen and we never find out why. God never told Jacob why, or God never told Job why. And then he said to Gazelle, gird up thy loins, and take thy staff in thy hand, and go thy way. If thou meet any man, salute him not. And if any salute thee, answer him not again. Basically, he's saying just run. Don't stop and talk to anybody about anything. Proverbs 26 says, he that sendeth a message by the hand of a fool cutteth off the feet, and drinketh damage. So 2 Kings 4 says, I lay my staff upon the face of the child. And the mother of the child said, as the Lord liveth, as the soul liveth, and I will leave thee. And he arose and followed her. And Gazelle passed on before them, and laid the staff upon the face of the child, but there was neither voice nor hearing. Wherefore he went again to meet him, and told him, saying, The child is not awake. And when Elijah had come to the house, behold, the child was dead, and laid upon his bed. And so he went therefore, and shut the door upon them in twain, and prayed to the Lord. And he went up and laid upon the child, and put his mouth upon his mouth, and his eyes upon his eyes, and his hands upon his hands. And he stretched himself up on the child, and flesh the child was waxed warm. Sometimes we need to identify with the people that we're trying to reach. Ezekiel 3 says, So the Spirit lifted me up and took me away, and went to the wilderness in the heat of my spirit, and the hand of the Lord was strong upon me. And then I came to them in the captivity of Telabbit, and dwelt by the river of Chesbar, and I sat where they sat, and remained there, astonished among them 7 days. 2 Kings 4. Then he returned and walked to the house, and to and fro and went up, and stretched himself upon him. And the child sneezed 7 times, and the child opened his eyes. And he called Gizelle, and said, Call the Shushemite. So he called her. And when she had come to the house, he said, Take up thy son. And she went in, and she fell at his feet, and bowed herself at the ground, and took up her son, and went out. And Elijah came again to Gilgal. And there was a certain dearth in the land, and the sons of the prophets were sitting before him. And he said unto a servant, Sit on the great pots, and sit at the pottage for the sons of the prophets. And one went out to the field to gather herbs, and found a wild vine. He gathered therefore wild gourds in his lapful, and he came to shred them in the pot of pottage, for they knew him not. And they poured out the men to eat, and it came to pass when they were eating the pottage, that they cried out and said, O thou man of God, there is death in the pot. And they could not eat thereof. This guy found this wild vine, and it ended up being poison. But he said, Then bring meal. And when he cast to the pot, he said, Pour out thy people, and they may eat. And then there was no harm in the pot. So the prophet took the poison out of the pot by praying for him. This is kind of where we get the idea of praying for our food before we eat it. Psalms 104 says, We cause the grass to grow for the cattle, and the herb for the service of men, that he may bring forth food out of the earth, and the wine that maketh glad the heart of man, and the oil to make his face to shine, and bread with strength is a man's heart. 2 Kings 4:42. And there came a man from Baalshadda, and brought the man of God bread of the first fruits, 20 loaves of barley, and full ears of corn, and the husk therefore. And he said, Give to the people that they may eat. And his server said, What should I set before the 100 men? And again give the people that they may eat, for thus saith the Lord, They shall eat, and they shall leave thereof. So he set it before them, and they did eat, and left thereof, according to the word of the Lord. Matthew 14 says, But Jesus said unto them, They need not depart, for I give them to eat. And he said unto him, We have here 5 loaves and 2 fishes. And he said, Bring them to hinder to me. God can take what little you have and make it enough. Jesus was able to feed 5,000 men with just 2 little sandwiches. 1 Timothy 6 says, But godliness with contentment is great gain. For he brought nothing into this world, and certainly we can carry nothing out. And having food and raiment, let there be therefore content. But they that with rich fall to temptation and a snare, and to many foolish and helpful lusts, which drown men in destructive and perdition. For the love of money is the root of all evil, which is what some coveted after, that they have erred from the faith, and perceived themselves through many sorrows. Well guys, that's the video. I appreciate you guys watching. If you have any questions, you can comment below, or you can send me an email. Make sure you subscribe, you like, you share, you tell your friends about it. I'll see you guys in the next video after this. I'm going to put a couple links on the screen. Bottom right is going to be the 2 Kings Bible study. Top left is going to be 1 Kings. And then right below is going to be a video YouTube thinks you're going to like. Usually it's the video that I did previous to this. Anyways, guys, have a great day, and I'll see you next time.